Alright guys, so Ian the Vegan Magato Cherry said some absolutely ridiculous things at the UFC 310 Media Day this week, and I want to talk a little bit about it, okay? So obviously Ian Garry fights Shavkat Rakhmonov this weekend, and I for one think that his head's going to get squeezed right off of his shoulders, but regardless, he starts off his media day with the first answer being either incorrect or a lie to make his story sound cooler. I mean, I don't know what is going on here with Ian the vegan. Maybe all that tofu and lentil soup is slowing down his brain function or something, but he goes back and forth throughout the interview on this particular topic. So let's take a look at the first clip here.
You've described your rise as perfect in the UFC, so I guess could you have drawn this up any more perfect outside of possibly fighting for an undisputed title?
I told you guys I had a plan. I told you it was a six-fight plan, and on my sixth fight, I'll win the world title. When I fight Shavkat, that'll be number 5. So it's been perfect. I think the only way this would have been nicer is if I would have taken out someone like a Kobe or an Usman, proved that wrestling defense, beat one of those guys who've been in the division for so long, and then take out Shavkat for the title. That's the only way I would have drawn up better in my mind, but God has gifted me a golden opportunity to go out here on Saturday night, cement myself as the #1 contender, and I'm going to take it by the balls and I'm going to have some fun.
Okay, now we are 30 seconds into this interview before he says something that is at the very least questionable. I don't quite understand what he's talking about, so he goes on this, tangent about how he had a 6-fight plan and this fight is number 5. Now, I don't know if Ian the Vegan Magato Cherry is aware of his own record, although actually I know that he is, because later on he goes back to how many fights he's actually had in the UFC, but this is going to be his 9th fight in the UFC, so I have no idea where this 6-fight plan business is coming from. Now, maybe Ian the Vegan Magato Cherry said this, after his fight with Gabriel Green or something, and maybe he didn't specify that his plan started now, and since his rise has maybe taken a little bit longer than he thought it would, he can just arbitrarily decide that that is when his 6-fight plan actually starts. But this is a very, this clip is easily the best out of all the ones that I have gathered here for you today, because he goes on to say some pretty crazy things about his opponent, Shavkat Rakhmonov, that I thought were, a little disparaging and also just completely and totally incorrect and delusional. And something else I want to just quickly point out is Ian the Vegan Magato Cherry does this thing where he pauses before he answers. Okay, now I don't know if his wife has coached him to do this because it makes him sound more profound or something, but nothing that Ian the Vegan Magato Cherry said there was profound or would have required pause for you to, make sure you chose your words wisely. And he does this throughout the entirety of the interview, and it drives me a little crazy. Okay, now let's get to the next clip, and this is where we start to see some absolutely ridiculous things said by Ian the Vegan.
You've never faced a guy that'll get in your face and try to wrestle you. Shavkat can do that. Shavkat's not faced a long, rangy guy that can also grapple with him. You can do that. Do you kind of view that? Do you understand where they're coming from?
Yes, the MMA fan base has questions about how legit Shavkat is. Not that he hasn't proved or done anything that hasn't been phenomenal so far in his career. 18 up, 18 down is pretty spectacular, but moments of very sloppy performance. I mean, Jeff Neal was arguably winning the fight, cracked him a lot, hurt him, and was very lucky to come away with a finish in that fight. And then just his opponents haven't been as high a level in totality as mine, I believe. Obviously, we share 2. And then just, again, like you say, pressure, constant pressure. Can I deal with the pressure? Can I stop the wrestling? Can I beat him on the feet? Can I do these things? The answer is yes. But I've got to go out and show the world Saturday night.
Okay, now, first off, I want to point out that pause, again, that we get before he begins his answer, even though, like I said, nothing he is saying is even remotely profound. And we even see him tutting his fingers a little bit, as if he's, having to think through all of his words and is, some sort of, genius or something. It's fucking weird. Okay, but then he goes on to talk about his opponent, Shavkat Rakhmonov, and in this he says some unbelievably ridiculous things. Okay, he talks about how Shavkat Rakhmonov has showed moments of, having very sloppy performances, which, to be fair, Shavkat has in a few moments in his career looked a little bit sloppy, although it's really only in one fight, okay, and that was against Jeff Neal, which then Ian Garry elaborates on. And when he talks about Shavkat Rakhmonov's fight with Jeff Neal, he says that Jeff Neal was basically winning that fight, and Shavkat was very lucky to find a finish there, which I thought was absolutely fucking mental, okay? Because when you look at the striking statistics for that fight, and he goes on to say even more ridiculous things about this performance and others from Shavkat Rakhmonov, but you've got Shavkat outstriking Jeff Neal in all 3 rounds. Had this fight gone to a decision, Shavkat would have won this fight 30-27. Now, Jeff Neal did have moments of success throughout the course of this fight, but Shavkat Rakhmonov was landing at a massive clip, 63% strike, significant strike percentage. That is crazy, right? And Jeff Neal, while he had a few moments, was getting his ass beat. Not to mention, and this will come up later, or at least I'll bring it up again later, okay, because I don't want you people to forget, but Jeff Neal missed weight by a significant margin for his fight with Shavkat Rakhmonov. So when we want to talk about and compare performances, I think that should be noted. And then he touches on something here that he's going to, again, elaborate on further, saying that he has fought higher level competition than Shavkat Rakhmonov, which is, I thought, an insane take. And, technically speaking, he could argue that, considering he has fought more ranked opponents, but we're going to go over that in a little bit when he elaborates on it further. So I'll play the next clip for you, and then we'll talk about that a little bit after.
Afraid, people think he's the boogeyman. I don't. So I guess, what are you seeing that other people don't see?
I respect everything he's done. I respect his 18-0, and it's phenomenal. But I just don't see it being as crazy as everyone makes it out to be. I mean, when you want to say it, like, he's 6-0 in the UFC, I'm 8-0 in the UFC. I have more knockouts in the UFC. I have more wins in the UFC. I have more wins over ranked opponents in the UFC. And you can absolutely make the case that the 8 people I've fought are better than the 6 people he's fought. But I don't get the credit that he gets. And that's okay. I don't need it. I don't want it. I'm going to earn it on Saturday night when I beat him.
Okay, now, again, I have to point out the pausing, because Ian Garry just got asked about why he doesn't think Shavkat Rakhmonov is the boogeyman, okay? And Ian Garry took 25 seconds to say, I don't think his record's as crazy as people think it is. I don't understand why the fuck did he read a self-help book or some, fucking stockbroker's book on how to sell shit, or what? I don't understand what he's doing. There must have been a book somewhere that he read that Layla forced him to read, of course, where it says if you pause while you're speaking, people will think you are intelligent. Okay, but it took him 25 seconds to say, I don't think his record is as crazy as people think it is, which is literally, the least intelligent way you could describe Shavkat Rakhmonov, which is fine, by the way, but don't try to dress it up, okay? Stop putting lipstick on a pig, which is exactly what Ian Garry is used to doing. But, and then he goes on to talk about how Shavkat Rakhmonov has less wins in the UFC than he does, and Ian Garry has more knockouts than Shavkat Rakhmonov does, which is, technically true. But again, it's just kind of funny because, Shavkat doesn't have as many fights in the UFC. So Shavkat literally can't have as many wins as Ian Garry does, because Ian Garry has won his fights, and he has more fights than him. So Shavkat is, in a sense, playing catch up in that regard. He literally cannot have more wins or more fights than Ian Garry does because of how many fights he's had. And yes, Ian the Vegan Magato Sherry does have actually 2 more knockouts than Shavkat Rakhmonov, although one of them, actually 2 of them, are TKOs, but that's okay, we'll count them as knockouts. But what he, fails to, I guess, mention or whatever is that Shavkat has 3 more finishes than Ian the Vegan Magado Cherry does in the UFC, because Ian the Vegan Magado Cherry seems to get a lot of decisions, which again, there's nothing wrong with that, okay? But he goes on further in just a little bit. But I want to just briefly touch on that the narrative that he keeps putting out there, that he's fought higher level competition because he's fought more ranked opponents. And while it is true he's fought more ranked opponents, I want to point out who those opponents are, okay? So Daniel Rodriguez was ranked number 15 when he fought Ian the Vegan Magado Cherry. And if we take a look at when he fought Ian the Vegan Magado Cherry, he was coming off of a submission loss, by the way, to Neil Magny, who will get brought up in just a little bit here. But, you know, Daniel Rodriguez, pardon me, Jesus, his best win is over, I mean, Li Jingliang, or I mean, I don't even know who got him his number, okay? And I'm not trying to shit on D-Rod because I think he's a cool dude, but he's not really top level competition in the welterweight division. And then also we have a ranked win over Michael Venom Page. And listen, this might be a bit of a hot take for some of you guys, but I think Michael Venom Page is not all that, okay? I think Michael Venom Page is a can crusher, and I think that we're getting him here post prime. And not to mention, you know, he got ranked beating Kevin Holland, who is okay sometimes, okay? Kevin Holland is a very, very inconsistent fighter. And if we take a look at when he fought MVP, he was coming off of a loss to Jack Della Maddalena, and, you know, he had beaten Michael Chiesa and Santiago Ponzinibbio in the welterweight division to get that ranking, I guess, that Michael Venom Page was able to take. So, yeah, technically you fought more ranked opponents than Shavkat Rakhmonov, but I don't know that I would argue that you have fought better competition. I mean, Shavkat Rakhmonov's win over Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is better than, I think, any win Ian Garry has, period. Okay, so I'm going to play the last clip for you, if I'm not mistaken, and it is, in my opinion, the worst one, and then we are going to talk about it a little bit after that.
Ian, to your left over here. Obviously, you mentioned the fights that you and Shavkat both have fought. When we think of that, we think of the Jeff Neals, Neil Magny's. Why do you think people choose not to just see that both of you guys have beat the same guys? Do you think it's the finishes that he did, or what do you?
I love you, Leo. Sorry, my little boy's getting upset because he can't come up here with me. Let's put it this way. I think you'll all agree with this. I'm not the most loved fighter in the world. Now, when you have that opinion, it changes the way you look at fights, right? Hence why I don't give it any weight. When you watch me versus Jeff Neal, you watch Shavkat versus Jeff Neal, who did it better? Sure, he got a finish, but who had a cleaner performance? Me, right? When you watch Magny, a 30-24, dude, that was domination. So I do them clean. I know what I'm doing. I'm very, very talented, and I don't care what the world thinks of me, if they want to think negatively or they want to think positively. I'm doing me. As I said, I was a kid from Dublin, Ireland, who had a dream. Sat there and said, I want to be one of the best fighters the world's ever seen. I'm one fight away from cementing myself an opportunity to win a world title. I don't care what people think about me. I'm having the time of my life, and I'm enjoying every second of it with the people I love and the people I've traveled the world with. That's all that matters to me.
Sure enough.
Right now, yet again, for like the third time in this interview, Ian the Vegan Magado Cherry tries to compare the way he beat his opponents that he shares with Shavkat Rakhmonov, okay? And he is absolutely and totally, completely fucking delusional when he's talking about it, okay? So he starts off talking about the Jeff Neal performance, and he says, well, who did it cleaner? Yeah, sure, he got a finish, but who did it cleaner? Who had the cleaner performance? I did. Acting as if his performance against Jeff Neal was more impressive, okay? Now, he won a split decision in that fight. There were a bunch of people that thought Ian the Vegan Magado Cherry could have potentially lost because every single round the striking numbers were very close. And not just that, Jeff Neal had a lot more pop on his shots than Ian the Vegan Magado Cherry did throughout this fight. Now, Ian in that fight also landed at a less percentage like accuracy clip than Jeff Neal. So for him to pretend like he just danced around and picked him apart is just it's very strange to me, especially when we touched on it earlier. But if you take a look at how many strikes Shavkat landed on Jeff Neal compared to Ian Garry, it is a massive difference. And then, not to mention, of course, he topped it off with a finish, right? Not a single time in Shavkat's fight did he have a differential in a round of less than 14. He was ahead on significant strikes in round 1 by 14 against Jeff Neal, 15 in round 2, and 15 in round 3, whereas Ian the Vegan Magato Cherry oftentimes was very close, right? We have 18 to 20, we have 17 to 23, and then we see a bigger gap in the last round at 11 of 24, not to mention he allowed Jeff Neal to control him for large portions of this fight. Now, I don't understand in what fucking world, to borrow a word from Brendan Schaub, okay, in what facet, okay, do you think your performance was better or cleaner than Shavkat Rakhmonov's? He took, like, you know, a few more significant strikes to dole out double what you did. So it's just, it was strange to hear him say that. And then he talks about his fight with Neil Magny. Now, listen, dude, I've been saying this for a very long time, and I think that it still rings true. His win over Neil Magny has not aged well, even a little bit, okay? In the last half of a decade, the only people who have not finished Neil Magny that have beaten him is Ian Garry and Michael Chiesa, right? We've seen Shavkat Rakhmonov finish Neil Magny in the second round, right? We saw Gilbert Burns strangle Neil Magny in the first round. We've now seen Michael Morales and Carlos Prates both knock out Neil Magny in the first round. In the last 5 years, the only person to not do that or finish him is Ian the Vegan Magato Cherry. I think that performance was not all that impressive, if I'm being honest. Now, I understand that the scorecards were very much in favor of Ian the Vegan Magato Cherry, but, like, you had an injured old man who has been finished by almost every single person that he's fought, and you couldn't get the job done, okay? It was a little strange to see that, you know, and I thought at the time, well, I feel like he should have maybe finished him. But then when we go and see him get finished by two young up-and-comers after that, right, it kind of diminishes Ian the Vegan Magato Cherry's win a little bit. And like I said, when you look before at the people that have beaten him, I mean, this guy's been finished by Ponzinibbio, RDA, Lorenz Larkin, right, Damian Maia, okay, Sergio Moraes. He's been finished by the guys I mentioned as well, Rakhmonov, Burns, Michael Morales, Carlos Prates. The only guy, okay, that has not finished him in the UFC, I think, actually, since Neil Magny's entire time in the UFC, I think the only guy who has not finished him, let me just double check before I say something incorrect, he's got one other decision loss in the UFC to Seth Baczynski in 2013. So in the last 12 years now, actually, the only two people that have not finished him are Ian Garry and Michael Chiesa. And I don't know that that is company you want to be hanging out with. So I don't know what the fuck Ian the Vegan Magato Cherry's talking to. Again, I think that maybe the lack of, you know, good healthy fats and protein is getting to his head. He needs to lay off the lentil soup and maybe have a steak or something like that, because holy shit, you just said a bunch of incorrect things, and this was only about half of his interview. I didn't want to play the whole thing for you, so I just picked out a few clips that I thought were the most egregious. But what the fuck are we talking about? Shavkat Rakhmonov has fought all of his opponents more impressively than you have fought yours. Let's just be honest. He finished Steve Wonderboy Thompson. He finished Jeff Neal. He finished Neil Magny. He finished Carlston Harris with a spinning hook kick. Okay? This guy, I just don't, you know, Jesus fucking Christ. And the pausing. Somebody needs to reach out to Ian the Vegan Magato Cherry. Unless you're like, you know, about to explain some fucking crazy shit in the most sophisticated way possible, we don't need all those pauses. Your interview could have been half as long, and we see this a lot with guys in the UFC. This is an Anthony Smith trait or a Michael Chandler trait, where it just takes him so long to say so little. Okay, so little. Pound for pound words or per capita words per what they're actually saying is very low. Honestly, I think that Stipe Miocic, okay, per capita says more than Ian the Vegan Magato Cherry. If we count the amount of words that they have come out of their mouth and then compare it to what they've actually said, I think Stipe Miocic is more profound and says more than Ian the Vegan Magato Cherry, Michael Chandler. And, you know, so that's it. But anyways, dude, I just wanted to cover this Media Day interview a little bit, so that'll be that. I'm going to do another one on a few other guys that I think said some stupid things. Like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. I will see you at the next video. Bye-bye.